Everybody, and we are live. I am so excited tonight. I want to welcome everybody to BellTube and to our very special Lit RPG live stream brought to us, of course, by the amazing company Podium Entertainment. Tonight, I am really fired up, and you're going to hear it in my voice a lot because I have been hearing about this series in the world of Lit RPG probably since its inception, and I finally got around to checking it out. And of course, we're talking about the Noobtown series. And tonight, I am joined, of course, by author of this amazing series, who's just celebrating his book 8 release, which we're going to talk about tonight, Ryan Rimmel, and the voice actor behind the audio, which is just incredible. Our friend of the channel, of course, is Johnathan McClain. Gentlemen, welcome to BellTube. Please let everybody know how you guys are doing tonight. Ryan, maybe start with you.
Doing great. Just we're checking out. Everyone seems to be liking the book. They really like a couple of the chapters I gave for Johnathan specifically, and it's been well enjoyed, and I appreciate it.
Oh, I love to hear that. How about you, Johnathan?
Things are going very well. Yes. Yes. And I appreciate it, Ryan. And the question I've been getting over the last couple of days the most is what did you do to Ryan to make him so mad that he would write things like that for you? Ryan, I don't think you're deep enough in the series yet.
I'm not.
Ryan, in book 8, he did it. Which book did you do it for originally?
Book 4, I believe. I had a book, or maybe book 3. Every so often, I like to put a For Johnathan chapter in, really test Johnathan out, make sure he remembers that he's an actual actor who has screen credits and does important stuff. So I make his life heck for a short period of time.
And they're actually, and to Ryan's point, I mean, that's the title of those chapters. The title of the chapters is For Johnathan. And,
I love that.
And this most recent one was quite something indeed. It was quite something indeed. It took, normally I do a couple hour session of recording and I'll get through a handful of chapters. It took like 2 full days just to get that down. Like
You're cracking up.
Days. Not because it was so, because it's incredibly hard what Ryan wrote. Like it's impossibly difficult what he gave to me to do, and was very sort of specific. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for too many people, but like, let's put it this way: it's an entire classroom of characters, all of whom are specified in very precise detail with different accents, different quality of voice, and to some degree, like literally impossible things. Like I think my favorite was something along the lines of, Ryan, do you remember? It was like she said in the voice of someone who clearly was hiding a secret that no one could, like, I mean, stuff like that, like really impossible stuff to do. So thank you. And also fuck you.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not doing a good job.
I love when you're torturing the voice actor. Christopher Lang in the chat says For Johnathan chapters is just perfect, and Matt says was literally Googling for the answer to this when I found the stream. Well, I'm really glad you're here, Ryan. For the people who are unfamiliar with Noobtown, how would you describe it in a few sentences?
Noobtown's a tale of Jim, who got hit by Truck Coon and was transported to the world of Ordinal. And he's a middle-aged dad who suddenly, he's like poking towards the end of retirement, getting ready to cruise out. And suddenly he finds himself in this whole different world where he's got to be a hero to everybody. And he's really not into that for a long period of time. And he kind of comes up with finds a whole bunch of different characters to interact with, Badgelore the Badger, Shart the Demon, and they just have a wild series of adventures. It's basically dad jokes and making fun of other tropes in LitRPG and the like.
I love it, and I love how meta you get with it, both, when you are, like you said, kind of calling out some of those tropes in the genre, but also deep into it when you're talking directly to your voice actor within the pages of the novel. I mean, it doesn't get any more meta, I don't think, than that. Doug Senneth is a huge Lit RPG reader. This guy has read even more than I have, which is pretty incredible. Johnathan, you've been the voice of this series, since book one. And that one, by the way, if you're new to the channel, it's in the description below, both the very first book in the series called The Mayor of Noobtown, all the way up to the new release, which we'll talk about here in a moment. That's all listed in the description. But Johnathan, you've been the voice of this series. What was your first impression when you first got this gig?
So this has been 6 years now that Ryan and I have been doing this together. It was my very first LitRPG. I did not know what LitRPG was before I got this handed to me.
So this is the very first one.
Yeah, the very first one. And at this point, I've got like 14 series that I'm doing. So it really opened. I mean, it opened up a huge door of opportunity for me. I'm super grateful, like incredibly grateful for. My reaction to it was like, I don't know what this is. What is this? And fortunately, one of the it's a book and it's funny and I get it. But what are all these stat sheets and stuff? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And fortunately, the producer, this wonderful woman, Emily Durr at Podium, who is just, I love her to death. She's actually a big RPG fan herself. She's kind of a proud geek. And
Awesome.
She was like, oh, it's like, have you ever played D&D? I was like, of course. She's like, you'll be fine. I was like, okay. And then when I understood that was sort of the framework and the RPG of it, and I did a little bit of a dive, and I was like, oh, okay, I got it. And from there, it's just been off to the races. So, and each book has gotten progressively more challenging as Ryan has given me greater challenges, but also I'm so deeply invested in the world at this point. No one obviously loves his series more than Ryan. He created it.
Yeah.
It comes out of his brain. But I got to argue to be a close second because I feel a deeply personal connection to these characters. And
Sure.
I love this series like a lot.
That to me, like I said, I'm so excited that we're getting to do this tonight, because had we not, it may have languished way too long. It's already been way too long on my own TBR that I haven't hit it yet, but I will rapidly get to current because I absolutely loved the book, The Mayor of Noobtown. It was funny. The minute we get introduced to Shart, the demon, I already knew that, okay, I have a sensibility with this author and kind of his general mojo, and this is going to be something that I'm really going to enjoy. And of course, this book that just released yesterday, it's another big milestone. It's book 8 in this series, and I think I even have a photo of it I can throw up here. Maybe, yes. There we go. The War of the Noobs. Ryan, how does it feel to have made this kind of milestone already? You're 8 books in 6 years.
It's a lot. I wrote the first one and I was kind of expecting it to just be that. And then, it's like, oh, it did pretty good. So I did a second one and on we went. Started getting by book 3. I was like, when's the third one going to be out? But yeah, it's been fun. I've got it plotted out for the next 4. And then we're gonna see. But I'm really impressed. I really love the fans, the fact that they've stuck with me for all this fun times and Badger related goodness.
I can't wait. It looks like we have another comment here saying, Christopher says, I have book 8 and read chapter 1, but decided to hold and wait for the audiobook. That wasn't easy to do. Well, I think that speaks to the talent of Mr. McClain. Yeah, I don't blame you in the least. We have a question from the chat. I'm going to ask it here. Matt wants to know, how did voice Badger lore end up evolving from how it was in book 1 to present?
Well, first of all, it's interesting. He's not in book 1. When does Badger lore show up the first time?
Yeah, because I haven't read it. I haven't read anything with him in it yet.
Badger lore features in book 2. So I was planning on putting him in book 1, but I never got around to it. And then I'm like, book 2 rolled around. I'm like, okay, I got to put Badger lore in here. I need 3 characters so they can argue better.
Yeah, which is awesome and super fun. And then the answer to the question is, and I've answered this question before, so I'll just this is the real answer. I've answered it in Reddit and stuff. So the first 2 books happened in 2019, both of them in 2019, I think. Early in 2019 and then later in the year. And that was back when I didn't have a home studio. I had been doing audiobooks for a few years, but I never put in a studio in my house. And so I was going to places and doing them. And those places would have an engineer and they would keep all the files and yada, yada, yada. And then the pandemic happened and I had to figure out how to do books from home. So I built a studio in my house. And then book 3 came along and I did not have access to the original audio files for reference because they were in a studio somewhere. And I could not remember for the life of me because it had been close to a year or something.
Sure.
And I was like, I feel like I did it like this. I did not do it like that. And so the voice of Badgelord changed between books 2 and book 3 because of operator error.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm glad, I guess, because I actually love the voice that I ultimately landed on for Badgelord. He's actually, I played this game with someone on Reddit too, who finally figured out the answer. I will put this out there, and you're welcome to go to my website or DM me or whatever if you want to play this game with me too. The voice of Badgelord, as it stands now, is based on a very, very famous A-list movie star who's a friend of mine. And I heard him talking to his mom one time, and he's Scottish, and it was barely intelligible. And I was like, oh, this is the voice I want to do for this character. And so that's where it comes from. So that's a little fun, like, what do you call it? Like treasure hunt that we can do. If you guys want to reach out to me via social media, I will be happy to go back and forth. I won't tell you, but I won't tell you but if you get it right, I won't deny it. How about that? So there you go. So that's the answer. That's the answer.
I love it. That's awesome. Ryan, what inspired you to write this series to begin with? And did you set out to make it as comedic as it wound up?
So, my wife and I were discussing a trip to Disney World. And I was trying to figure out a way to make some money to go to Disney World. And also on my bucket list, I had write a book. So, little column A, little column B, I wrote Noobtown Book 1 in about a month. And it was terrible. It was god awful. And I said, this sucks, and I put it off the side. And then my wife came along and said, well, this is your dream. Let me look at it. She said, okay, this sucks, but I think it's salvageable. And so she went through and edited the heck out of it. By the time she was done, it actually was very good. And so then we released it, and everything else happened after that. But it was a fun time. It was my bucket list.
I like that you matched up columns A and columns B in kind of two birds with one stone it kind of bit. So do you think that humor is maybe underrated in fantasy as a genre in totality? Because I see it more in LitRPG than I see it in, say, epic fantasy, or certainly in grimdark. It's going to be a little bit more darker humor. But do you feel like there needs to be a little bit more of it in places?
I think I always like more humor, but in LitRPG in particular, I always when I started doing it, I viewed it more as like a Dungeons & Dragons game.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen a serious Dungeons & Dragons game. I've seen people attempt to do serious Dungeons & Dragons games, but I've never seen anyone pull off a serious Dungeons & Dragons game. There's always going to be those asides and jokes and humor and someone snarking in the background. And so because of that, I figured that would be a perfect fit for LitRPG.
I agree. And the hero, our main character, Jim, really kind of stands out to me as a different kind of protagonist in almost any of the LitRPGs that I've read or that I've listened to. In your mind, Ryan, what makes him different than the typical LitRPG main character?
Well, when I was writing Jim, and one of the things I was reading about when you write your first book is make the protagonist after you. So Jim is literally based off me, and I am a 45-year-old guy, or like 41 at the time or something like that.
Sure.
So instead of being the normal protagonist is like this, 19-year-old kid who suddenly finds all this power and goes out and wants to do great things. And Jim's a 45-year-old guy. He finds all this power and is like, there's a hammock and I could fish. So that's what he tries to do. And if you let Jim buy his druthers, he's just going to sit around and drink. But in Noobtown, he can't. So he has to go and do all these adventures. But there's always that little hidden, I'd rather be fishing sort of mentality about him that he's got going on.
I think that's great. And we don't really run into, as you say, a lot of kind of that middle-age main character, particularly in fantasy. A lot of the times we get these chosen one tropes where, it's the young coming of age story and they're the destined person, or even in some of the isekai stuff or just kind of mainstream lit RPG, it's still kind of like a 20 something, 30 something game. We don't really get that 40 plus. So speaking on behalf of that age bracket, I also have to say thank you, because I feel seen and heard, through the character of Jim. Have there been other books or movies or even video games that kind of influenced your tone with Noobtown or the style?
Oh, tone and style. The land. I just finished reading The Land. You could really look at
Sure.
Noobtown as me doing an ape on the land style, while bringing a lot of my own elements in.
Sure. And
'Cause, yeah,
for those of you that are watching, The Land is by author Alaron Kong, and I think there's about 8 or 9 books out in that series as well. But I interrupted. Please continue.
no, that's fine. That's just one of the older ones. So I was driving around, so I used to listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I found LitRPG, started listening to a lot of LitRPG, and I just realized that I could do that, which is a great thing. So I started to do that, but yes, my part of it was influenced from The Land because I tried to get that system in there, and then there's all the other little scrapings from other various lit RPGs that were out, which was a lot more of a confined list at this point. And
Oh yeah.
just from general fantasy novels that I like to read, I've read Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, Dune, that sort of stuff. So I just kind of brought all that in, and then it was me going back to my Dungeons and Dragons days, which I still play, and just how would a D&D character handle this? Well, this is how that would happen, and so I just brought all that in, and it worked out pretty well.
I love it. So was The Land your first lit RPG experience in reading?
Yes, I was basically back in the day. That was the first, and Kong will tell you he's the father of American RPG. So
Yeah.
I grabbed the book and I read it and was like, this is actually pretty cool. I like the stats and the world
Yeah.
building and the I think it's the power fantasy. I like the guy moving in and just kind of exploding into the world. So that's kind of what I did with Jim to some extent. And
Sure.
that's where I started, and I kept going from there.
And I think that makes sense too, because it does have a little bit of similarities where, Alaron Kong's character is building the Mist Village, and here you've got Noobtown, and there are some striking similarities in the best possible way. Like you picked elements that make sense to do without it feeling derivative of it all. So, hats off to you for the originality. I think it's really good. If Noobtown was, let's see, now I'm asking because we have a Hollywood actor on the stream. Of course, I already know the answer to this question, but maybe you'll surprise me. If Noobtown were adapted to a TV series or a movie, who would you want to play Jim?
Well, Johnathan, of course, because I don't want to. No, I'd rather have Johnathan or Angela or Shart. But if I was to have an actor, geez, God, probably Tom Holland or someone like that, because he gets shrunk down for that. But I don't know. You'd almost need an older guy. I really don't analyze this sort of thing. I hate to say.
That's okay. One of the things that I like to do on this show is ask questions that no one's ever asked you before. So at least half of the time, I don't expect answers because they're just random questions that I happen to think of. But here's one that you could probably answer pretty easily, and that's how would you say your writing approach has changed from that, if it's changed, I suppose, from that first awful draft of the Mayor of Noobtown to releasing the book from yesterday that came out? How's your approach to writing changed in this 8 books?
Well, when I started off, I just I had a very basic approach. Didn't really go through and analyze anything I did too seriously. I left that for my wife, poor girl. And as I've progressed, I am what is called an author in edits. My first drafts tend to be rather dry. Jim is a very dry man in my original drafts, and I go through it 2 or 3 times. And then after that, I have a process where I have a on-screen narrator that narrates my book back to me. So I listen to the book and try to think of what it would sound like when Jonathan's doing it. And then I modify it so that I can torture Johnathan the most possible, or at least make him sound good. Little column A, lot of column.
Depending on your mood with Johnathan at the day? Fair enough.
Yeah, it's basically go through it over and over again until I feel I have a comfortable product. Then I give it to my wife, and she yells at me until I cry, and then we fix it and make it work.
I like that approach. Do you, when you're actually in that writing process, do you plan, are you kind of an outliner, an architect of these books, or do you kind of let the characters develop as they go chapter to chapter in your mind?
So I am a scene to scene author. I basically have, like, when I wrote book one, one of the final scenes. There's a scene with a badly injured badge lord, which I'm going to leave it there. At the end of book eight, and I had that scene. That was like the second or third scene I thought of when I was writing up Noobtown's original notes. And then I had a big scene in book seven, which was um, like Jim fighting all of the various copies of the Sphinx. I had that scene pre-done for years. The scene with Rebthar in book four. So I have these scenes, and what I'm trying to do is just take the characters there and fill them out to get them there. But while I'm doing that, there's a lot of editing, or I let the characters develop on their own. Like my original draft of Sir Dalton, my wife hated, so I turned him from not a very good guy to the Dalton everyone knows and loves, who's kind of a doofy dad kind of figure.
Very cool. I like that. So, what stage of it would you consider to be the most challenging aspect of the writing? Is it just getting that story out right at the beginning, or is it carving through some of those edits to mold and shape each book as you want those scenes to go?
I find that getting new words on the page is the tricky part. I love to edit the stuff that's already there and add in more detail and flesh it out. But going every new scene is kind of me chiseling. You know, I don't like chiseling the groundwork, and I like tinkering on the house that's already built.
Got it. So just getting those words on the page is the challenge of it. That's interesting. I've asked other authors that before, and I've gotten pretty much every wide array of answers possible. I have people that can just vomit words out like crazy, but then they don't know what to pull back. And, you're really more on the other side. It's just that first hurdle of getting them on the page. But that's interesting to me. When you're writing, do you have a particular writing setup? Like, do you have rituals or habits that you've become accustomed to when it's time to sit down and write something brand new in the Noobtown world?
I have keys that I recognize in my mental state when I should start adding stuff, and keys that I recognize that I should be editing stuff, because I have to be in a mood to add stuff, and sometimes those moods are a little rare. But editing
What
stuff,
kind,
I can
what kind of
always
mood? What kind of
um,
mood does Ryan want to add things in?
either really really tired or really
Okay,
really clear. Like a lot of times, like book eight was a lot of getting written at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm exhausted because some mental barrier breaks, and I could just vomit out a
sure.
massive number of words. And then my wife will go, none of these are actual words in English. You need to fix these. And I will go through and edit them so that they are real words that are in a dictionary, because some people apparently care about that. And
I
then
mean, it is your world. If you decide to make up a word, it's kind
I
of
have
up to
used that
you.
exact argument repeatedly, and apparently it is a bad one.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with your wife. I've just made myself a note off to the side. Never argue words with Ryan's wife.
Brilliant. I should write that down, but I don't have anything to write with. I'm sure I'll remember.
I'm sure at 1 in the morning tonight, you'll absolutely remember when the brain fog clears and, the clarity, gets through.
Yep.
That's very cool. I wanted to ask Jonathan some questions here as well, because you kind of alluded to something earlier, which I just find fascinating. And it's when you were changing the voice between, the character between books, inadvertent as it were. What's your process like for bringing these characters to life? When you get new characters, and even from the very beginning of book one, how does Jonathan decide what's Jim sound like, and what does Shart sound like? What kind of happens, in the kitchen of Jonathan's voice, culinary voice?
Sure. Well, generally speaking, protagonists, unless there's a specific indication, like I narrated a book recently where the protagonist is a Brit, and I was British the whole time. But apart from that, generally the protagonist is of any book male protagonist is sort of a version of my voice, but with whatever the spirit and attitude and tone and personality of that character demands, right? I think you and I have talked about this before, Brian. I'm not much of a I'm gonna pick the voices guy. I'm more of a I find the because I come from an acting background, so it's
Hmm.
like I find the character and then let the energy and the spirit and the essence of the character sort of dictate all of the rest of it. The one exception to that is, and it's interesting. So I had gotten notes from Ryan before I began this series that he had envisioned Shart specifically, for example, as a Gilbert Gottfried type.
Okay.
And anybody who rest in peace, Gilbert,
Yeah.
right. But if anybody was around with these books in 2021, I was actually over in London shooting a movie, and they reached out to me from Podium and they said, we want to do an April Fool's joke that we are replacing you as the narrator with Gilbert Gottfried. And we've gone on to his Cameo and we've hired him. And so it's still out there. You can find it online, like Gilbert Gottfried actually narrating a section of the Noobtown books. Um,
Excellent.
and I had originally tried to do that particular, like a Gilbert Gottfried imitation. I'm not really a mimic, so that's
Okay.
not necessarily my skill set. But B, for me, it was like, can I sustain this and can I modulate it enough to have it be interesting and dynamic and still tell the story? Because if I'm just thinking about the voice, to my point earlier, I lose the storytelling, I feel like. And
Sure.
so my emphasis is always on kind of like telling the story and making sure that the dialogue pops and exchanges. I will say this about Ryan's writing, that is such a gift. He understands innately comedy from a timing perspective. You can't teach that. You either get comedy in its rhythm and the timing, or you don't,
Yep.
right?
I 100% agree. You're funny or you're not. Yeah.
And Ryan gets it, and it's on the page. And so for me, finding those voices is really just about like, all right, rhythmically, what's going to be sustainable? How am I going to be able to play these characters off of each other? And what's going to be the most dynamic, interesting way to put these scenes into the air? And sort of that's how I come at it. But I mean, I do recall there was an original document, couple of documents, like an Excel spreadsheet with character breakdowns, and then like just documents with like a pretty extensive list of information as a starter kit. As we've gone on, I feel like Ryan's been more generous with just sort of letting me take the reins on some stuff.
Sure.
But if there's
Yeah.
anything specific, I do get notes and thoughts.
Sure. Ryan, has there ever been a time that Jonathan surprised you with a voice that you're like, "Whoa, I wasn't expecting that," either good or bad?
It's all been good.
Yeah,
What
I would
happened
think so.
with the document is Emily stopped sending them to me because I wasn't responding to them because I'm like, he's got this. Um, you've got this. I believe in you, I think is the proper Noobtown expression.
Thank
Um,
you.
but yeah, he's gotten all the voices correct. I don't really have any notes. I'm not a voice actor, so
Well,
Yeah.
and I
there's
would
some
say,
good reason for everything.
I would say, I rest her soul. Jessica Walter, the great Jessica Walter, who played Elaine Bluth on Arrested Development, played my mom on a TV series for a couple of years, sometime back, and
She's fantastic. Oh my
she's
God.
great. I miss her.
Yeah.
I love her to death. She used to say, "If it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage." And so for Ryan, like he gives me enough in the material to get it, I think, like a real clear sense of who these people are. And there's just not a lot of guesswork involved in terms of like finding the right quality for the character, and thus far that's I think that's been true. Ryan can tell me later when we're off camera if
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my God, Jonathan, I've been waiting forever to tell you about all these different characters that are wrong. No, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it brings up kind of that, what I was alluding to earlier, that you didn't remember what the Bachelor character sounded like in the audio files were, on lockdown, literally. When you're looking at a long-term series, whether it be Noobtown or any of the other myriad of series that you're now involved with, how do you remember what you did? Is it is like it would sound like you got to go back and listen to yourself to kind of bring it fresh into your mind, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I do. Now that now over these last 5 years since I started doing it at home and I sort of engineer myself, I
Hmm.
when I hit a character the first time and I settle on what it's going to be, I take that voice clip, I put it in its own folder, and so I've got folders with all the characters. And so, in 6 months, a year, whatever, when I come back to it, I'll just go in, find that clip, play it for myself, and get it. And usually it takes 2 or 3 tries when I'm into a new book in a series to get it back. But
Sure.
once I've got it back, it lives there. And now with the recurring characters, the series
Yeah.
regulars, if you will, in
Sure.
Ryan's book, 8 books in, like
You
I don't
know.
need to be reminded how they sound. You know
You
what I
know.
mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes Ryan will invoke a character that made a brief appearance like 5 books back, and I'm like, who the fuck is this?
Right.
What are we doing? And I got to go find that.
Yeah, on
But
page 47 in book 4 somewhere it had 3 lines. Yeah.
right. But generally they get baked in. You know, it's like it's riding a bike.
That's awesome. Would you, I know a lot of people that watch this particular stream there are a lot of people that are aspiring voice actors. And one of the things that interested me that you just talked about was that you did set up your home studio. What was that like for you to do that? Because that has to be a little bit different than just walking into an established studio. The camera light goes on, or in this case, just the microphone light goes on and you go. Did you have much experience with, self-production when it comes to audio?
Zero.
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 What was
Zero.
your learning curve like for doing it? Because I bet you there's a lot of people that want to know.
Like 36 hours. I mean, it was 5 years ago this month when like everything locked down, and I was at Random House doing some books for them, and they were like, "Cool, how are you going to get those to us?" I was like, I don't know. What do you mean? And they were like, "Figure it out." And so I went to a place called Sweetwater, which is an audio company online. Yeah. And I was like, "How quickly can I get I called my friends. I was like, "What mics do you use? What preamps? What do I need? What is a preamp? How do you use Pro Tools? What are the shortcuts? How much acoustic foam do I need? And that kind of thing." And it was a very, very quick. So those first few books after I got myself set up took a really long time to do because I had to learn as I was going.
Learn it.
I would say it probably took, but not, look, for just doing this job, this isn't high-end engineer, and I don't engineer my own files. Those go to engineering team, editing, QC. That I just send raw audio, so I just record. Other people have that skill set, yeah. But it's really interesting in that I also audition a lot for commercial voiceovers, video games, and stuff from my agents, and I get more now than I used to because spending this much time behind a microphone with audiobooks just makes you more comfortable. Like, again, I will never be able to repay Ryan Rimmel for the floodgate that he opened for me because it's put me in a position to, do this whole other thing that I never imagined myself doing as much as I do it. And it's been awesome. And if anybody, you'll give everybody my socials and stuff. And Brian, I'm pretty available. And if anyone does want to reach out to me, I'm always happy to answer questions about like setups or, mics I use or whatever.
That's fantastic. Folks, I'll put that in the description below in the video after we get done tonight. And if you want to reach out to, them on socials, I think that they would welcome it. I know that Johnathan is very active and he's just a gracious dude who has not let success go to his head at all. Have you made adjustments ever to the voice acting or your narration style based on reader feedback, whether it be in Noobtown or any series, or you're just doing what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, that down that way madness lies.
Doesn't it though?
Right. I mean, I don't know. I'd be curious. Ryan, do you engage with like online reviews, readers and stuff at all, or do you ignore that?
I did once. I do not now. I paid a lot of attention to reviews, I think in book 3, when I started to get like enough bad reviews. I started looking into it to see what was going on. And I kind of modulated slightly to incorporate some of that. And then what I realized ultimately was the people who liked my books weren't saying bad things about them. Mm-hmm. And I got rid of some of the stuff that they liked. Otto Sherman's role got diminished, and he's one of the fan favorite characters, though no one told me that he was one of the fan favorite characters. So I diminished his role slightly. And then afterwards, everyone's like, where did Otto Sherman go? Please bring him back more.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, though. It is a huge slippery slope when you let democracy or what they think of it, affect what you're writing or how you're going to voice act it or whatnot. So I like the idea of sticking to your guns. Now
I think I've said this to you before, Ryan. Just to put a coda on that, if that's okay.
Mhm.
You know, it's funny, right? Like, I do care what people think. It would be disingenuous to say I don't. I'm just not going to let it affect what I do, because I think that when I say it bums me out when people don't like my work, I don't mean it the way people I think about that. I don't mean it hurts my feelings. I mean, I'd prefer people be nice and happy than not.
Sure.
But it's that it bums me out that they didn't have a good experience, because I'm not making this stuff for me. I don't do this work for me. I do it to like give to an audience and give some people something that they will enjoy. And so it's always disappointing when people don't. But art does not get created by committee, and you just can't. You just gotta guard against that, I feel like.
I think that's really valuable advice for any type of an artist, really. So, Ryan, let me ask you this. After you listened to The Mayor of Noobtown for your very first, time, and maybe after listening to book two, have you written characters since about book two with Jonathan in mind, knowing that he is the guy on the gig and that he is the voice of your vision?
I haven't written characters specifically for him. What I have done is have characters specifically reference stuff he's done. Chapter 7, we have what is it? Retired at 30. I have several references to that series.
Retired at 35. That was the show that Jessica Walter played my mom on. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, including I like the topiary statue best.
Yeah, there's some weird shit that happens. Like, yeah, there was one chapter where you went on it. I can't remember what it was. It was maybe book 7. I wrote a movie, as you both know, that came out a couple years back, and
Yeah.
that was the one I wanted to shoot. And so, yeah,
This is a good movie.
he did like a whole paragraph about, and I was like, this is for like the one person out there who's gonna know,
Or
but
you.
that one person who gets this reference is gonna go, oh shit, right? Like, it's like for
The
a very
Easter egg of all Easter eggs.
Yeah,
I love Easter eggs.
Yeah, it's gonna. Have you ever collaborated on like a character style or an interpretation together, or do you just let Jonathan do what he's going to do?
I just let Johnathan do what he's going to do. I'm a big guy about, if there's someone who can do it, let them do it.
Mhm.
So, if Johnathan specifically said he wanted something, I might look into it. But I've got, I'm going to do what I'm going to do with the story.
I really like that, how you guys are both in your own wheelhouse, and that, obviously after book 8, there's a mutual trust going that what everybody's, role is in this project. And it's really cool to know that you can go at a new project like a book 9 with the confidence that, okay, Jonathan's going to do a killer job voice acting this, and Jonathan is thinking, I'm going to have great material as an actor to work with. And I would think that if you're going to spend your time doing something, those are the kinds of things that you would want to be doing. Did you guys find that to be the case as well?
Yes.
Gotcha. That's an easy yes or no question. I just like to give the guest an easy one from now on. Ryan, what do you think makes for a great lit RPG book?
Well, I think what's really adds it is just like kind of it's a little bit of progression power fantasy. It's a little bit of you going in there and seeing this guy shake up the world. And it's a tiny bit stats. It's a tiny bit seeing how the story progresses with the stats. But I've been diminishing that in my own books because I don't like hearing Jonathan read out a 2.5 page long description of Jim's stats.
Yeah.
But mainly it's the build up and it's the seeing, it's the quests and kind of going through and getting the objectives all handled. I'm trying to think what it was describing once. It was the fact that there are quests, so you have obvious objectives. So the audience can follow behind you and be like, okay, so I clearly know what's going to happen here. They're going to go after the Dark Overlord. They're going to beat the Dark Overlord. And there's going to be sub quests that kind of take you that direction. But the fact that they kind of know where the story's going is beneficial in that respect. And it's just,
I like
they
that.
like to watch the build up.
That makes sense. What about you, Jonathan? What do you think makes it? I mean, you've read hundreds of the audiobooks and you've written your own lit RPG. What do you think makes for a great lit RPG book?
I mean, I don't fucking know, but I will say I don't. And as you know, as you talked, the one that I wrote is sort of like tangentially a lit RPG,
Hmm.
right? Like you and I chatted about. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I will say that in terms of so I'm maybe better equipped to answer that question from the perspective of someone who has read a lot of them.
Yeah. As a reader.
The ones that for me work and resonate, it comes down to something really simple. All of the tropey stuff that is required to do a lit RPG is necessary. Those are the
Hmm.
necessary ingredients. That's your foundation, and you have to right using the building a house thing that Ryan was talking about earlier. The foundation is the foundation. Yes, I did write one. It's actually on the shelf behind Brian's
If you
head
see
right.
the yellow book, it's called, yeah, it's up there. It's called Meet Your Maker. It's really good.
But so I think for me the true so like let's get the stats in. Let's get Ryan made an excellent point. The core of all drama is objectives and obstacles.
Hmm.
What are our objectives and what are the obstacles that we encounter to get there? That's drama, right? And so in lit RPG, it's laid out very cleanly. So all of that stuff is necessary. But the difference between a really good lit RPG, in my opinion, and one that is like fine is the really good one takes all of that stuff, gets it right, and then cares about the relationships and the characters. Because unless the people mean something to each other and want something from each other and need something in the world that they're occupying, then it's really kind of inconsequential.
Sure.
And the sneaky thing about Noobtown is that it superficially appears to be like a bunch of dad jokes, and all that stuff is true. But and I haven't told Ryan this yet, but in book 8, there's some stuff in book 8 in particular about accountability, responsibility, personal connection, devotion that like straight up wrecked me when I was narrating, like got me. And what Ryan's really good at that's very hard to do is go from ha 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 to
Hmm.
oh my god, like really fast. And to me, that's what makes something exceptional in any
Sure.
sort of storytelling, but in lit RPG in particular. Like give everybody the meat and potatoes. Make sure you're getting what you want, your nutrients. But
Hmm.
if it tastes good too,
Right.
then you're really ahead of the curve. And that's to me that's the thing is the people who can understand that it's about relationships at the end of the day, that the campaigns are driven by people and characters. Those are the ones that to me sing.
I love it. It's interesting because, Ryan, you mentioned that The Land was the first book that you've read in the genre. And I've been reading this stuff, like I said, since I think 2012. You talk about perfect timing, right? I mean, lit RPG is just not even hitting the crest of where it's going yet. It is growing and growing. What do you attribute this popularity to a genre that has been around for about 13, 14 years to the point that nobody on BookTube up until maybe the last year or so that had any type of a following was ever talking about lit RPG. In fact, it used to annoy me. It's one of the reasons I started this channel is because I felt like a lot of the larger YouTube channels out there were poo-pooing lit RPG too much. And I said, you know what, if I ever did a channel, I'm going to give it the respect that I feel that it deserves because it's quality literature. It's just a different genre. What do you attribute the explosive popularity to the genre beyond the people that have been there since The Land?
Well, I mean, Dungeon Crawler Carl would be the easy answer. I think what's happened is as the genre matured, we moved away from a very niche audience to broadening the audience of lit RPG, realizing there was a broader audience for lit RPG, and then writing stories that fit that audience. And because of the structure of lit RPG, it brings in some new people who would, typically like to do like a let's play. So they're instead of doing a let's play, they're doing a
Mhm.
let's play of Jim in Ordinal, and instead of watching it on YouTube, they're listening to Johnathan narrate it. So I think it's that principally. It's the early books of the genre are very stat heavy in a lot of
Hmm.
cases.
They
They're
are. They're
very,
pretty crunchy.
and I don't think as Noobtown has developed, I've gotten a lot out of the crunch.
Hmm.
And I just think the reliance on crunch originally got us a core audience. It got us the original fans. It got the genre built up to the point where it's became a thing. But then after that, after it became real, it was broadening out to more traditional fantasy tropes, while at the same time retaining the core of what lit RPG is.
Yeah.
And you do
And,
all that together.
and I think that that's wise that as these audiobooks come out, you've limited the stat, repetition, because that is a very, very common thing that a lot of people that listen to audiobooks, particularly new people to the genre of lit RPG, don't love when an author throws in a character sheet at the end of every single chapter. I can imagine, Jonathan, that must get old reading them. And I know as a listener, it's certainly old listening to them when there's just, clipping at every chapter or every other chapter. So I applaud you and thank you, Ryan, for growing in that direction as well. Jonathan, what makes Noobtown stand out to you? I mean, like the most. When you think of Noobtown, what just comes to mind?
I mean, it's hilariously funny.
Yeah,
It's legitimately, and not just like funny for fill in the blank. Like it's legit. It's hilariously funny. It as I just said a minute ago, it does a really good job of keeping its focus on the characters and what they want and need.
mm-hmm.
And I think beyond that, there's an ineffable sort of magical thing that when something works, it works. And there's something sort of ineffably comfortable and like really warm. And it just feels like a real familiar embrace. The world feels safe, but at the same time, dangerous when it needs to. The characters all feel like they're in the same story, which is very, very important. Everyone's having the same conversation. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think that, look, if there were a formula, everybody'd be doing it, and nothing would be special, right? So
Absolutely.
there's just sometimes you just catch, and I'm very fortunate that I got to ride the lightning with this one.
Very cool. Ryan, what do you think the funniest, if you could think, if this has happened, what's the funniest fan feedback you've ever received on any of these books?
Oh God. Let's see.
Because I
here.
have to imagine that a lot of your audience loves humor. I mean, that's
Yeah.
such a huge pillar that this series stands upon. So typically funny people like listening to or reading funny books. I have to think that there's some funny people in comments that you've received before.
I get a lot of comments about people describing where they've started doing Puma checks in their real life. So lots of fans have been telling me, that whenever they walk into an area, it's Puma check. If a guy leaves laundry around, he's Puma check. Or you got this, I believe in you is also exceedingly common amongst my fans.
Excellent.
Is a good statement.
I love that you have catchphrases that that the fandom is very well aware of. When we were talking backstage before we went on about Lit RPG Con, and I wonder how many people will be saying those exact catchphrases to both of you as they get a chance to meet you in person. For sure they will. Oh my God! So if Noobtown was a video game, Ryan, what genre do you think it would be? Is it open world? Is it RPG? Is it like a roguelike? What do you think it is?
Noobtown would be open world RPG, sort of like Skyrim, where there's the definite quest line, but lots of side quests all throughout the area.
Exploration.
With Bachelor and Chart riding on either shoulder, so you have your shoulder demon and your other shoulder devil.
That's very cool. So this is kind of a more of a off Noobtown question, but as a writer, what do you think that people don't realize about being an author that maybe something you didn't realize before you started writing as well?
Well, I mean, it's one of those jobs that seems simple until you try to write 120,000 words or 160,000 words and have it all mesh together. Because sometimes you write a story like book 3. I wrote the story, and my wife looked at it and said, this doesn't at all gel, and I had to rewrite the whole thing, trying to get the same tone from the first chapter to the last chapter and have the whole thing actually constructively build to a good ending.
Did that take
And
some time to do?
Oh God, yeah. It was. I wrote it. That was the longest up till recently. That was the longest span between Noobtown books because I had it written and I had to rewrite a whole bunch of it, cut out a whole bunch of it that didn't work at all, and add in a whole bunch to the front half. But at the end, I felt it was one of the stronger Noobtown books, but it was just I didn't expect that particular issue of having to go through and just making sure Jim sounded the way Jim sounds at the beginning and middle and the end of the book. And he was like, "Oh no, this is a different character at the end of the book." And I'm like, "Oh, that's not going to work."
I bet you that's something that a lot of people don't realize when they write a story as these characters go through events. Yes, there's character arcs, and yes, they do develop, but they still have to have some reminiscence of what they were at the beginning of the book. So, or in your case, at the beginning of the series, because it is a changed character, but at their core, they're still who they are. That's
Yeah.
got to be challenging for you, Jonathan. You've acted across the board in every medium. What is something specifically about audiobook narrating that you think people may either underestimate or they don't realize about the process that maybe you didn't realize before you started doing audio?
It's incredibly physically demanding. I work out probably more than I ever used to, in a different way, right? Like when I was on camera a lot, it's like in case I had to take my shirt off, like I need to make sure that I don't get
Sure.
fired. But
Yeah.
but
They don't have a
but there
stunt double for you? There's no Jonathan stunt double?
there is
But
not now that I'm getting older, there is. But it's incredibly physically demanding. You can't, you got to be careful about your breath control. You got to be careful about the mouth noise. You have to sit very, very still because the microphone picks up everything. And it is physically and mentally exhausting. And obviously it's hard on the vocal cords and,
sure.
all that. But if you're doing it right, I think, um, right is not fair. That's not fair. Everybody's got their own style. People do things different ways. That's inaccurate. If you're doing it in an invested way, like I like to do it, and like the
Hmm.
audio narrators that I enjoy listening to like to do it, like a Jeff Hayes, for example, does it.
Sure.
There is a level of energy that requires a sincere amount of physical output, and that I think people don't necessarily realize. They figure you go in the booth and you turn on the thing and you talk a little while and then you get out and you have some lunch.
Go have lunch. Yeah.
It can be a heavy lift. It can be a
That
heavy lift.
that's interesting to me too, because I would think as an actor, you're used to either having a director or people on the crew or cast members, or even if you are on stage, you've got an audience that is reacting to what you're doing. Did you find it to be a little bit of a trick when you first started talking to an empty room and there's no feedback from anybody?
That's a good question. Yeah, for sure. I actually think that for me, at least, that makes it a purer form of expression because I'm not performing for anybody and I'm not
Right.
seeking anybody's approval. No applause. There's going to be no applause. There's going to be no good job, champ, from the director. It's going to be, this is part of the keep your own counsel thing that we were talking about earlier, is
Hmm.
that you have to trust that you are making the right choices. And I think that's true when you're writing too. Like you're in a room, you're creating the work, and you just have to trust that you're doing the work, the service that it deserves. But I do love that it's my responsibility to tell the whole story. I love both the pressure and the reward of that. If it doesn't work, it's my fault. I got nobody else to blame. It's not a director's fault. The editor didn't screw me out of a good take. Like it's my
Hmm.
fault. Um, and
And
in
conversely, if it does work.
that's it. In success, we all get to pat ourselves on the back. And yeah, I love it. I really love it.
Well, it shows. I mean, in the audiobooks that I've listened to you do, you can tell if someone's phoning it in, and you can tell if there's passion, and there's passion. You bring the same passion to just even when you're talking socially. You're a passionate person. Ryan, we're coming up on the hour. I got a couple of final questions for each of you, and this is really more as, and you may never have seen yourself in this light, Ryan, before you wrote Noobtown, but you are, on a pedestal for a lot of people who are just absolutely in love with your series. And while it might just be your cool idea that you decided to write and have your wife edit and send it off to do audio, it's made a big impact on a lot of people. And I bet you some of those people are also aspiring writers. And so, what kind of advice do you have today, or some thoughts on people that are aspiring writers, particularly ones that would like to involve as much humor as you do?
Well, to get as much humor in, watch a lot of sources, get a lot of material, and then distill the good parts into your books. Be ready to get rid of stuff that you don't like. Get ready to rework stuff that even stuff that works often needs reworked repeatedly to get it to be properly hammered out. And listen to this stuff because it's going to be read by a narrator. So you might have situations where characters are talking and it doesn't work the way it works on the page. Might work written, but it may not work when you actually have someone speak it. So be
Interesting.
mindful of your audiobook would be the short of that.
Well, that brings me to Jonathan's question, and I know that there's people in the chat that have aspirations to do some voice work and to maybe take a shot at doing some audiobooks. What advice do you have for aspiring narrators, Jonathan?
I like it's not an easy job, and so do it because you love it. Do it because you love words. Do it because you love storytelling. Do it because you love the thing. If you're doing it because you're like, this will be better than my fill in the blank thing and be easier or whatever, that's fine. That's valid. I don't want to tell anyone not to pursue their aspirations, but I would just say, like, treat it like a career. Treat it like a real job, because it is a real job, and because people spend, you're asking people to spend hours, in the case of Noobtown 8, 16 plus hours with your voice in their ears. It is a very intimate thing.
Hmm.
And I would say try and be respectful as much as possible. Like the technical stuff, all that anybody can tell you. The stuff that I would say that maybe
Sure.
you don't
Yep.
hear so much is just be respectful of the material and be respectful of the integrity of the work, and approach it as a piece of art, no matter. And by the way, the other thing is, I've narrated books that I don't respond to.
Right.
I've narrated, like Newtown happens to be a series that I would enjoy if I were just consuming it without,
Hmm.
being. There are books that I've read that aren't for me, but that's the point. They're not for me. They're for the people who are going to be listening and receiving. So, like, you don't phone it in. Give it your all. Put everything into it, because honestly, there are easier ways to, like, go sell crack or something instead, because that's much easier.
You've heard it here, folks. Jonathan McClain.
Yeah, I am encouraging drug dealing on
Yeah,
Belt.
you
Yeah.
can always, yeah. So this is your number one source for demonetization, folks. Anywho's,
Sorry about
no, but I just wanted to follow up with that because I envision you almost as an artistic conduit between Ryan and the people that are going to buy the audiobook. And
that.
you just have to make sure that the wiring is straight all the way through and that the ideas from Ryan's mind and Ryan's wife, we're not gonna forget about Ryan's wife because she's an integral part of this, as we've learned tonight on the Lit RPG live stream. But that you're a conduit to getting some feelings and a story to the audience that it's really intended for, regardless if you are personally the audience yourself. So I think that's good. Let's talk one last question here. What's next for both of you guys? Are you starting another book, Ryan? Are you taking a little bit of time off between this one? What's up next for you?
I'm finishing Fifth Era Book 3. I saw a question about Fifth Era earlier. It's
Yep.
based on my Dungeons and Dragons campaigns entirely. Got it's an interesting series. I've got another one out called Sword of Justice, which I'm trying to do more of it like an Indiana Jones style adventure. It's got a single protagonist with a talking sword, and he's a magical sword knight, because I love simple titles like that. And he's just going on some classic Indiana Jones style adventures. And then I got my secret hidden third book. That's it's actually written, so we'll see where that one goes. But I also started working on Noobtown 9 because I got a lot of balls in the air right now. So Noobtown 9, I've got the silly chapter. Noobtown's formula is basically Jim has to do something involving a puma check, has to suffer a gratuitous groin injury, And then there's a silly chapter, which sometimes is a Fort Jonathan chapter, and sometimes is moving through a puma-filled forest, and sometimes I think everyone's been mentioning this to me lately is the was it Two Good Men chapter, where Jim's codpiece is fused to his groin, and they have to pry it off.
Of course they do.
Yeah. There's a
Jonathan,
callback to that in book 8, so that's how deep my lore goes.
I,
I have callbacks to that sort of thing.
the next time I put my cod piece on, Ryan, I'm going to be thinking of you. I just want you to know that. And Jonathan, the next time my cod piece gets stuck, fused
Yeah.
on me, I'll be
Yeah,
thinking of you reaching over and pulling it off. Jonathan, what's up next for you in the world of lit RPG or the world of voice acting, or what do you got going on?
That's so sweet. I mean, I have a handful of books that I'm narrating. Tonight I have to get in. I owe one by the weekend. So I've got a bunch of books that I will be narrating over the course of the year and that will be rolling out over the course of the year. Ryan and I will both be at LitRPG Con in the inaugural LitRPG Con in Denver in July. I also owe a movie to the studio that I'm writing. I have to turn in my next book in my series to the editor in 3 weeks. I'm pitching a TV show, and there might be a chance that a thing that I wrote is going to be a play in London. So I'm seeing.
So you've basically been sitting around doing nothing. Got it. Okay.
Bro, it is as Ryan can. I mean, listening to Ryan talk. I mean, like he knows, and well, too. Like you do 50 different things. Like it takes a village, and it's exhausting, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm super, super grateful.
No, your projects are, like I said, you bring a ton of passion to the things that you do. So I'm really excited for them. Gentlemen, I just want to say thank you for coming on the channel tonight. And Ryan, once again, congratulations on the new book. Johnathan, congrats to you as well. Folks, I want to thank Podium Entertainment for sponsoring this amazing stream and introducing me to these wonderful people. Both book 1, The Mayor of Noobtown, and book 8, which just released yesterday, The War of the Noobs, is listed already in the description of the video below. You definitely want to check that out. If you are unfamiliar with Jonathan's work, go listen to that free sample on audio, and I swear you'll be downloading it in a minute. The guy knows his stuff, and this is coming from somebody who's listened to hundreds of audiobooks. And like Jonathan mentioned earlier, you're putting somebody in your ears for an extended period of time. They got to be good, and he is, and I'm excited to continue with my Noobtown journey. All right, I've talked enough. You guys, thank you both so much for coming on the show tonight, and I hope to have you both back for a book 9 announcement, hopefully soon.
Thank you, Brian.
No, thank you very much, Brian.
All right, guys. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.